The woman who walked into Lucas Crawford's ranch house that October afternoon in 1876 wore widow's black and carried papers she claimed made her his wife, though Lucas had never seen her before in his life and knew with absolute certainty he had never married anyone. She stood in the doorway of his Colorado ranch near Red Cloud, a small community barely visible on most maps, her dark dress dusty from travel and her eyes red-rimmed but defiant. Lucas stared at her from where he had been tallying accounts at his desk, his pen still poised above the ledger as if frozen in time. The woman was perhaps 23 or 24, with auburn hair pulled back in a severe bun, and a face that would have been beautiful if not twisted with what appeared to be genuine grief. "I am sorry for your loss, madam," Lucas finally said, setting down his pen and rising to his feet. At 31, he stood well over 6 feet tall, his frame lean from years of hard work on the ranch. "But I think you have made a mistake. I have never married." The woman stepped fully into the room, clutching a worn carpetbag in one hand and a folded piece of paper in the other. "You are Lucas Crawford, are you not? Owner of the Double C Ranch?" "I am," Lucas confirmed warily. "Then there is no mistake." She held out the paper with a trembling hand. "I am Delilah Daniels, your widow." Lucas took the document and unfolded it, his eyes scanning the elaborate script. It appeared to be a marriage certificate, dated 3 years prior in Denver, bearing his name and signature alongside those of the woman before him. The signatures of witnesses and an officiant were present as well. Lucas felt a chill run down his spine despite the warmth of the afternoon. "This is a forgery," he said flatly, though his heart had begun to race. "I was never in Denver 3 years ago. I have been running this ranch for the past 6 years without interruption." Delilah's face crumpled, and she reached out to steady herself against the doorframe. "Please," she whispered. "I have nowhere else to go. My husband, your brother, he told me everything before he died. He said if anything happened to him, I should come here, that you would take care of me as family." Lucas felt the ground shift beneath his feet. "My brother." "Liam," Delilah said, her voice breaking. "Liam Crawford. He said you were twins." The room seemed to spin. Lucas had not heard his brother's name spoken aloud in over a decade. They had been born minutes apart, identical in every way except temperament. Liam had left home at 17, hungry for adventure and riches, while Lucas had stayed to work the land their father had claimed. Their parents had died 5 years ago, and Lucas had assumed Liam was either dead or living a life far from Colorado. They had exchanged perhaps 3 letters in all those years. "Liam is dead?" Lucas asked, his voice rough. Delilah nodded, tears now flowing freely down her cheeks. 3 weeks ago, pneumonia. We were trying to make our way here from Montana, but he got caught in an early storm. By the time we reached Cheyenne, he was burning with fever. He lasted 2 days. She pressed a hand to her mouth, suppressing a sob. "I buried him there. I could not afford to bring him home." Lucas moved around the desk, his initial suspicion warring with a grief he had not expected to feel. Liam had been wild and reckless, but he had also been Lucas's other half, the part of himself that dared to dream beyond the boundaries of the ranch. "Why would he use my name to marry you?" "He was running from some men in Denver," Delilah admitted, her voice small. "Bad men he owed money to. He said if they found him, they would find me too, so he used your name to protect me. He always planned to tell you to make it right. He spoke of you constantly, of the ranch, of coming home." She looked up at Lucas with desperate eyes. "He loved you, even though he could not bring himself to return while he still owed those debts. He wanted to come back clean, to make you proud." Lucas studied the woman before him, searching for signs of deception. Her grief appeared genuine, and the story had the ring of truth to it. Liam had always been charming and foolish in equal measure, the type to borrow trouble and then try to sweet-talk his way out of it. Using his twin brother's name for protection sounded exactly like something Liam would do. "You have proof of any of this?" Lucas asked, not unkindly. Delilah set down her carpet bag and rummaged through it, producing a stack of letters tied with string. "He wrote to you. Never sent them, but he wrote. And this." She pulled out a small daguerreotype in a tarnished frame. Lucas took the photograph and felt his breath catch. It showed a slightly younger version of himself standing beside Delilah, her hand resting on his shoulder, both of them dressed for a wedding. Except it was not him. It was Liam, identical down to the cleft in his chin and the way his left eyebrow sat slightly higher than his right. His brother wore a suit Lucas had never seen, and his arm was wrapped around Delilah's waist with easy affection. "We were married by a justice of the peace," Delilah continued. "It was small, just us and two strangers as witnesses. Liam said when things were settled, we would have a proper wedding with you there, with family." Her voice broke again. "He wanted so badly to reconcile with you." Lucas handed back the photograph and untied the string on the letters. The first one he unfolded was dated nearly 3 years ago, shortly after the wedding according to the certificate. Liam's handwriting, familiar from childhood, sprawled across the page in the enthusiastic scrawl Lucas remembered. "Dear Luke," it began, using the nickname only Liam had ever called him. "I have done something you will likely want to throttle me for, but I hope when you understand you will forgive me. I have met the most extraordinary woman." Lucas read through several of the letters, each one detailing Liam's life, his love for Delilah, his regrets about the distance between them, and his hopes of one day returning to the ranch. The final letter, dated just a month ago, spoke of their plans to travel to Colorado before winter set in. "I believe you," Lucas said finally, setting the letters on his desk. "About Liam, about the marriage, all of it." Delilah's shoulders sagged with relief. "Thank you. I know this is irregular. I know I have no real claim here, but Liam said you were a good man, an honorable man. I have no family left, nowhere to go. I can work. I am strong and willing. I just need somewhere safe until I can figure out what comes next." Lucas looked at this woman who had married his brother under his own name, who now stood in his home with nothing but a carpetbag and grief. He thought of Liam, wild and foolish Liam, who had finally found something worth settling down for and had run out of time before he could make things right. The weight of his twin's death settled on him like a physical thing, heavy and suffocating. "You can stay," Lucas said. "Not as my widow, because that would be a lie, but as my sister-in-law. This was Liam's home once, and that makes it yours too if you want it." Delilah's eyes widened. Truly," Lucas confirmed. "There is a spare room upstairs. It is small but clean. You can stay as long as you need." Fresh tears spilled down Delilah's cheeks, but these seemed to be of relief rather than sorrow. "I will earn my keep. I promise you that. I am a good cook and I can sew and keep house. I will not be a burden." "We will figure it out," Lucas said, suddenly exhausted. The ranch employed several hands who lived in the bunkhouse, and he had managed his own cooking and cleaning well enough over the years, but having someone to help would not be unwelcome. More than that, having someone who had known Liam who could tell him about his brother's final years felt like an unexpected gift. Lucas showed Delilah to the spare room, carrying her carpetbag up the narrow stairs. The room held a simple bed, a washstand, and a small chest of drawers. Delilah looked around with evident approval. "It is perfect," she said. "Thank you, Lucas. You do not know what this means to me." "You are family," Lucas replied simply. "However it came about, you are family now." Over the next several days, Delilah settled into life on the ranch with surprising ease. She proved to be an excellent cook, transforming Lucas's simple fare into proper meals that brought appreciative comments from the ranch hands. She mended clothes, organized the kitchen, and generally brought a sense of order to the household that Lucas had not realized was missing. He found himself watching her sometimes, trying to reconcile the quiet, capable woman who moved through his house with the romantic figure from Liam's letters. Delilah spoke little of herself initially, focusing instead on the practical tasks of daily life. But in the evenings, after supper had been cleared and the hands had returned to the bunkhouse, she would sit with Lucas and tell him stories about Liam. He talked about becoming a rancher himself one day, Delilah said one night as they sat by the fire. Said he had learned from the best, meaning you. He wanted to prove he could be responsible, that he could build something lasting. Lucas poked at the fire with an iron, sending sparks spiraling up the chimney. Liam never had much interest in ranching when we were boys. He found it dull. People change, Delilah said softly. He changed. Meeting me changed him, he said. Gave him a reason to think about the future instead of just the next adventure. How did you meet? Lucas asked. A small smile touched Delilah's lips. I was working in a hotel restaurant in Virginia City. Liam came in one evening, charming and full of stories. He asked if he could court me before he had even finished his meal. She shook her head at the memory. I told him I did not have time for smooth, talking drifters, but he came back the next day and the day after that, brought me wildflowers, wrote me terrible poetry. Made me laugh when I had almost forgotten how. What brought you to Virginia City? Lucas asked. Delilah's smile faded. My parents died of cholera when I was 16. I had no siblings, no close family. I worked wherever I could find employment, moving from town to town. Virginia City seemed as good as anywhere. She met Lucas's eyes. I was alone in the world, and then I was not. Liam made me feel like I belonged somewhere to someone. Lucas felt a pang of recognition. He had been alone too, in his own way, isolated on the ranch with only hired hands for company. He had told himself he was content, that the land and the work were enough. But sitting here with Delilah, listening to her soft voice in the firelit room, he realized how much he had been missing without even knowing it. I am sorry you lost him, Lucas said. And I am sorry I never got the chance to know him as the man he became. He would have liked that, Delilah replied. Reconciling with you was his dearest wish. As October turned to November, the first snows began to dust the peaks of the Rockies visible from the ranch. Lucas found his daily routines altered by Delilah's presence in ways both small and significant. There was hot coffee waiting when he came down in the mornings, fresh bread cooling on the counter. His clothes were mended without him having to ask. The house smelled of baking and wood smoke, and something floral he eventually identified as the lavender water Delilah used to rinse her hair. He also found himself reluctant to leave for the long days on the range that had once been his preference. He invented reasons to return to the house mid-morning or early afternoon, telling himself he needed to check accounts or repair a loose shingle. In truth, he simply wanted to be near Delilah, to hear her voice or see her smile when he said something that amused her. The realization that he was developing feelings for his brother's widow hit Lucas one evening in mid-November. Delilah had been at the ranch for 6 weeks, and they were sitting together after supper, working on separate tasks. She was darning socks while he reviewed supply orders for the winter months. The domesticity of the scene struck him suddenly. How right it felt to have her there, how empty the room would seem without her. Lucas looked up from his papers to find Delilah watching him, her needle stilled in her hand. Their eyes met and something passed between them, an acknowledgement of the attraction that had been building like static before a storm. Delilah looked away first, her cheeks flushing. "I should retire," she said, gathering her sewing basket with hands that trembled slightly. "It is late." "Delilah," Lucas began, not sure what he intended to say. She paused at the base of the stairs, her back to him. "Good night, Lucas." After she had gone, Lucas sat alone in the parlor, his head in his hands. This was wrong. Delilah was his brother's widow, grieving and vulnerable. She had come to him for protection and family, not for some romantic entanglement. He was dishonoring Liam's memory by even entertaining such thoughts, but the thoughts would not leave him alone. Over the following days, Lucas tried to maintain a proper distance, to treat Delilah with the respectful courtesy due a sister-in-law, and nothing more. He threw himself into ranch work, spending long hours in the cold checking fences and moving cattle to winter pastures. When he was forced to be in the house, he kept conversations brief and focused on practical matters. Delilah seemed to sense his withdrawal and matched it with her own. She was polite but reserved, no longer seeking him out for evening conversations. The warmth that had been growing between them cooled to something formal and strained. Lucas told himself this was for the best, even as the loneliness he had forgotten about during her first weeks at the ranch returned with doubled force. The situation might have continued indefinitely in this uncomfortable stasis if not for the arrival of the three men on a frozen December morning. Lucas was in the barn repairing tack when one of his hands, a young man named Billy, came running in. "Boss, there are men at the house," Billy panted. "Rough-looking characters. They are asking for your wife." Lucas felt ice form in his stomach. "How many?" "3, armed. They did not look friendly." Lucas grabbed his rifle from where it hung on the barn wall and strode toward the house, Billy following. As they approached, he could see 3 horses tied at the rail and 3 men standing on his porch. They wore the hard look of men familiar with violence, their gun belts worn and ready. The tallest of them, a man with a scar running from his eye to his jaw, turned as Lucas approached. "You Lucas Crawford?" "I am. What is your business here?" "We are looking for someone. A woman named Delilah Daniels. Heard she might be here claiming to be your widow." The man's smile did not reach his eyes. "Interesting, since you are clearly alive." "Miss Daniels is under my protection," Lucas said evenly, stopping at the base of the porch steps with his rifle held casually but ready. "Whatever business you think you have with her, you will discuss it with me first." "Our business is with the late Liam Crawford," another of the men said, this one shorter and stockier than the first. "He owed our employer a considerable sum, $3,000 to be exact. When a man dies without paying his debts, those debts pass to his wife." Lucas felt anger flare hot in his chest. Liam is dead. His widow has nothing. She came here with barely the clothes on her back. "That is unfortunate," Scarface said, "but the debt remains. Your brother borrowed that money for a mining speculation that went bust. Our employer is not a forgiving man." "Who is your employer?" Lucas demanded. "Man named Garrett in Denver. Maybe you heard of him. Garrett Pike. He runs most of the gambling and lending in the city, does not take kindly to being stiffed." Lucas had indeed heard of Garrett Pike, a man with a reputation for brutality and a network that extended throughout Colorado and beyond. Liam borrowed from Pike 3 years ago, near enough. Payments were made regular at first, then they stopped. Pike sent us to collect. We tracked Liam to Cheyenne, but he had already died. Trail led us here when we heard about a woman claiming to be Crawford's widow showing up at the Crawford ranch. "I will pay the debt," Lucas said, making the decision in an instant. Scarface raised an eyebrow. $3,000 is a lot of money. "I have it. I will need a week to arrange the funds." Lucas met the man's gaze steadily. "You have my word the debt will be paid in full." The 3 men exchanged glances, Finally, Scarface nodded. 1 week. We will be staying at the hotel in Red Cloud. If you try to run, or if the woman disappears, the deal is off and we will come back with more men. Understood? Understood. Lucas watched until the 3 men had mounted and ridden away before turning to Billy. Get Sam and tell him to gather the other hands. I want someone watching the approaches to the house at all times until those men are gone. Yes, sir. Billy hurried off toward the bunkhouse. Lucas entered the house to find Delilah standing in the parlor, her face pale. She had clearly been watching from the window. You heard? Lucas asked. Enough. Delilah's voice shook. Liam owed $3,000, apparently. Lucas set his rifle by the door and moved into the room. When did he borrow it? I do not know. He never told me about this debt. He said he had debts in Denver, but he never mentioned a specific amount or a name. She pressed her hands to her face. $3,000. Lucas, I cannot ask you to pay that. It is too much. You did not ask. I offered. Lucas kept his voice calm despite the rage simmering beneath his surface composure. Not at Delilah, but at Liam for leaving her with this burden, and at the men who would prey on a widow for a dead man's debt. I have money set aside. The ranch does well. I can cover it. It would ruin you, Delilah protested. It would not ruin me, though it will hurt, Lucas admitted. $3,000 was indeed a significant sum, representing years of careful savings. But you are family. This is what family does. Delilah crossed to him then, moving quickly, and took his hands in hers. Her fingers were cold and trembling. Why are you doing this? You barely know me. I brought this trouble to your door. You did not bring anything. Liam did, and he is my brother. His debts are my debts now. Lucas looked down at their joined hands, at how small hers appeared in his calloused grip. And you are wrong. I do know you. I have watched you these past weeks. You are kind and strong and resilient. You loved my brother enough to follow him across territories and to bury him alone in a strange town. You deserve better than to be hounded by Pike's men for money you never saw. Tears filled Delilah's eyes. I do not deserve your kindness. Yes, you do, Lucas said firmly. He released one of her hands to cup her cheek, wiping away a tear with his thumb. Delilah. She looked up at him, and Lucas saw his own feelings reflected in her eyes, the longing and the guilt and the impossibility of it all. They stood frozen for a long moment, the air between them electric with tension. Then Delilah stepped back, breaking the connection. I should prepare lunch. The hands will be hungry. Lucas let her go, knowing they were both running from something that terrified them more than Pike's men ever could. The following week was tense. Lucas rode into Denver to arrange the transfer of funds, a journey that took 2 days there and back. He withdrew money from the bank where he had deposited his savings over the years, watching the account that represented his security, and his dreams of expanding the ranch dwindle to almost nothing. The banker, a portly man named Henderson who had known Lucas for years, looked troubled as he counted out the money. This is a lot to withdraw at once, Lucas. Are you in some kind of trouble, settling a family debt? Lucas said shortly. If you need a loan to cover expenses over the winter. I will manage, Lucas assured him, though he was not entirely certain that was true. The ranch would survive, but the plans he had been making, the improvements he had wanted to implement, those would have to wait years now. He returned to find Delilah pale and withdrawn, barely eating. She flinched at every unexpected sound and insisted on helping Sam and the other hands with their watch rotations, bringing them coffee and hot food throughout the cold nights. You should rest, Lucas told her the evening before the week was up. I cannot rest knowing what this is costing you, Delilah replied. They were in the kitchen, where she was rolling out dough for the next morning's biscuits with mechanical precision. Lucas, there has to be another way. I could work, send Pike payments over time. Men like Pike do not accept payment plans, Lucas said. They want their money now and they want interest. If I tried to negotiate, they would likely demand more. Then I should leave, Delilah said desperately. Disappear. They would not know where to find me. They would burn my ranch to the ground looking for you, Lucas replied bluntly. And they would never stop searching. Pike's reputation depends on collecting his debts. You would spend the rest of your life running. Delilah's hand stilled on the rolling pin. I never wanted this, any of this. Lucas moved to stand beside her at the counter. I know. Liam promised me he was done with that life, that we could start fresh here. Her voice broke. He lied to me. He probably meant to make it right, Lucas said. Liam was always good at meaning to do things. Despite her distress, Delilah gave a shaky laugh. You knew him so well. He was my twin. We might have been different in temperament, but we shared the same weaknesses. The difference is I had the ranch to keep me grounded. Liam had nothing to anchor him until he found you. Delilah looked up at Lucas, and he saw the moment something shifted in her expression, some wall coming down. He told me once that you were the better man. I told him that was nonsense, that he was wonderful. But now I understand what he meant. You have honor, Lucas. True honor, not just talk. Delilah, Lucas said, his voice rough. I am falling in love with you, she whispered. I know I should not. I know it is wrong and impossible, but I cannot help it. Lucas felt his heart stop and then restart with painful force. It is not wrong. How can you say that? I was married to your brother. I am supposed to be in mourning. You are in mourning, Lucas said. I can see it in your eyes every day, but mourning does not mean your heart stops feeling. And what you felt for Liam, that was real and true. But Liam is gone and we are here, and what I feel for you has nothing to do with him and everything to do with you. What do you feel? Delilah asked, her eyes searching his face. Lucas took her flour-dusted hands in his. I love you. I think I started loving you the moment you walked into my house with your widow's weeds and your carpet bag, so fierce and lost at the same time. I tried not to. I told myself all the reasons it was wrong, but the heart does not listen to reason. Delilah made a sound between a laugh and a sob. This is madness. Yes, Lucas agreed. Complete madness. Then he kissed her and she kissed him back, and for a moment the world narrowed to just the two of them, flour and debts and dead brothers forgotten. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. We cannot, Delilah said, even as her fingers curled into his shirt. I know, Lucas replied, though he made no move to step away. They stood there in the kitchen, holding each other until the practicality of their situation reasserted itself. Tomorrow, Pike's men would come for their money. After that, they could figure out what came next. The three men arrived at noon the following day, riding up to the house with the same casual menace they had displayed before. Lucas met them with a saddlebag containing $3,000 in banknotes and gold coin. Scarface counted it carefully while his companions watched Lucas with hands resting on their guns. It is all here, he finally confirmed. Then we are done, Lucas said. Not quite. Scarface pulled out a paper and a pencil. Need you to sign a receipt. Proof the debt was paid, so Pike knows we did not just pocket the money. Lucas signed the paper, his hand steady despite the anger roiling inside him. Scarface examined the signature, nodded, and tucked the paper into his coat. Pleasure doing business with you, Crawford. He tipped his hat with mocking courtesy. You have yourself a good day now. Lucas watched them ride away, not moving until they had disappeared over the horizon. Then he turned to find Delilah standing in the doorway, tears streaming down her face. It is done, he said. She ran to him then, and he caught her in his arms, holding her as she wept. I am so sorry, she said over and over. So sorry. Do not be, Lucas murmured into her hair. You are worth far more than $3,000. Over the following weeks, as winter settled in earnest over Colorado, Lucas and Delilah navigated the uncertain territory of their feelings. They were careful around the ranch hands, maintaining a proper distance in public. But in the evenings, when it was just the two of them, they would sit close by the fire, talking for hours. Delilah told him about her childhood before her parents died, about traveling with her father who had been a school teacher. Lucas spoke about growing up with Liam, about learning to tell themselves apart by the different ways they approached the world. "You must miss him terribly," Delilah said one night. Lucas considered the question. "I miss who he could have been. We drifted so far apart that I barely knew him at the end. But yes, I miss my brother. I miss the connection we had as children before he left." "He missed you too," Delilah assured him. "He told me stories about you, how you taught him to ride, how you would cover for him when he shirked chores." "He loved you, Lucas, never doubt that." "I know," Lucas said quietly. "And I know he loved you, anyone who knew you would." Delilah smiled, the expression transforming her face. Lucas had noticed she smiled more now than when she had first arrived, the grief becoming something she carried rather than something that defined her. As Christmas approached, Lucas made a decision. He rode into Red Cloud and purchased a simple gold band from the jeweler, spending money he could barely afford on a ring that felt essential. He also stopped by the church to speak with Reverend Mitchell. "I want to marry someone," Lucas said without preamble, "but the situation is complicated." Reverend Mitchell, a kindly man in his 60s, gestured for Lucas to sit. "Tell me." Lucas explained the whole story, from Delilah's arrival to his brother's death to the debt he had paid. The Reverend listened without interruption, his expression thoughtful. "You love this woman?" Reverend Mitchell asked when Lucas had finished. "With everything I am," Lucas replied. "And she loves you, she says she does." "Does she still grieve for your brother?" "Yes," Lucas said honestly, "but grief and love are not mutually exclusive. She can honor Liam's memory and still build a life with me." The Reverend nodded slowly. "I see no impediment to marrying you. She was your brother's wife, not yours. The only question is whether you are both ready." "I am ready," Lucas said. "I've been alone my whole life, even when I was surrounded by people. With Delilah, I am not alone anymore." "Then you have my blessing," Reverend Mitchell said. "Bring her by when you are ready and we will discuss the ceremony." Lucas returned to the ranch feeling lighter than he had in weeks. He found Delilah in the kitchen as usual preparing dinner. She looked up as he entered, a question in her eyes. "I need to speak with you," Lucas said. Something in his tone made her set down her knife and wipe her hands on her apron. "What is it?" Lucas pulled out the ring box and opened it, revealing the simple gold band. "I know it has only been a few months. I know you are still mourning Liam. I know 100 reasons why this might be too soon or too much. But I also know that I love you and I want to spend my life with you. Delilah Daniels, will you marry me? Truly marry me, not as some legal fiction, but as my wife and my partner." Delilah stared at the ring, her eyes wide. "Lucas." "You do not have to answer now," Lucas said quickly. "Take all the time you need. I just wanted you to know my intentions, to know that this is not just some passing fancy. When I look at the future, I see you in it." Delilah reached out and took the box from his hands, looking down at the ring with an expression Lucas could not read. The silence stretched until he thought he might break from the tension. "Yes," she finally said. "Yes, I will marry you." Relief and joy flooded through Lucas in equal measure. "Truly, truly." Delilah looked up at him with shining eyes. "I love you, Lucas Crawford. I wish I had met you first, but life does not work that way. What I can do is choose you now, for all the tomorrows we have left." Lucas took the ring from the box and slid it onto her finger. It fit perfectly, as if it had been made for her. Then he pulled her into his arms and kissed her with all the pent-up longing and love he had been holding back. They set the wedding for February, giving themselves time to prepare and to let the community of Red Cloud grow accustomed to the idea. There was some gossip, inevitable in a small town, but Reverend Mitchell's endorsement went a long way toward smoothing any objections. Lucas used the intervening weeks to prepare the ranch for Delilah's permanent presence. He built her a larger wardrobe for the bedroom they would share, commissioned a new iron stove from Denver to replace the temperamental one in the kitchen, and generally tried to make the house into a proper home. Delilah sewed herself a new dress for the wedding, choosing a soft blue wool rather than traditional white. "I was married in white before," she explained to Lucas. "This is a new beginning. It should look different." The wedding took place on a cold, clear February morning in 1877. Nearly everyone from Red Cloud attended, cramming into the small church. Sam and the other ranch hands sat in the front row, grinning like they had arranged the whole thing themselves. Lucas stood at the altar in his best suit, watching as Delilah walked down the aisle alone, her head held high. She had no one to give her away, but she did not need anyone. She came to him of her own free will, her hand steady as she placed it in his. Reverend Mitchell performed the ceremony with warmth and dignity, speaking of love and commitment and the courage it took to embrace new beginnings. When Lucas slid the ring onto Delilah's finger for the second time, this time with vows and witnesses and the blessing of the church, he felt something settle into place inside him, some missing piece finally found. "You may kiss your bride," Reverend Mitchell said with a smile. Lucas did, to the cheers and applause of everyone present. When they broke apart, Delilah was laughing, her face radiant with happiness that made her more beautiful than Lucas had ever seen her. The reception was held at the ranch, with tables set up in the barn and food provided by half the town. There was music and dancing, and Lucas found himself pulling Delilah close for a waltz, marveling at how perfectly she fit in his arms. "Happy?" he asked as they swayed to the music. "Happier than I ever thought I would be again," Delilah replied. "You gave me a second chance, Lucas. At life, at love, at everything." "You gave me a first chance," Lucas countered. "I never knew what I was missing until you arrived." As winter gave way to spring, Lucas and Delilah settled into married life with an ease that surprised them both. The ranch hands accepted her presence without question, and soon she was as much a part of the operation as anyone, keeping books and managing supplies alongside her domestic duties. In April, Delilah discovered she was pregnant. She told Lucas over breakfast one morning, her voice tentative and hopeful. "A baby." Lucas felt wonder and terror in equal measure. "Are you certain?" "As certain as I can be without seeing a doctor," Delilah confirmed. "Lucas, are you pleased?" He crossed to her side of the table and knelt beside her chair, taking her hands in his. "Pleased does not begin to cover it. Delilah, this is everything I never let myself hope for." The pregnancy progressed smoothly, though Delilah suffered from morning sickness that lasted well into the afternoons. Lucas found himself hovering, anxious and protective, until Delilah laughingly shooed him back to his work. "Women have babies every day," she reminded him. "I am healthy and strong. Stop fretting." But Lucas could not help fretting, especially as Delilah's belly swelled and her ankles began to ache. He brought her tea and pillows, rubbed her feet, and generally tried to make her comfortable despite her protests that she was not an invalid. In November, as the year came full circle from when Delilah had first appeared at his door, she went into labor. Lucas sent Billy racing for the doctor in Red Cloud while Sam's wife Martha, who had experience with birthing, came to help. The labor lasted through the night and into the next day, hours of waiting that nearly drove Lucas mad with worry. He paced outside the bedroom door, listening to Delilah's cries and feeling utterly helpless. Finally, as afternoon light slanted through the windows, he heard a new sound, the wail of an infant. Martha opened the door moments later, her face tired but smiling. "You have a son," she announced. Lucas barely heard her, his attention fixed on the bundle in her arms. Martha placed the baby in his hands with practiced ease, and Lucas looked down at his son's red, wrinkled face with awe. "He is perfect," Lucas whispered. "He certainly has good lungs," Martha agreed. "Now come meet your wife properly. She did beautifully." Lucas entered the bedroom to find Delilah propped against pillows, her hair damp with sweat but her eyes bright. "Lucas." He sat carefully on the edge of the bed, angling the baby so she could see. "Look what we made." Delilah laughed weakly. "I may have done most of the work on this one." "All the work," Lucas conceded. "What should we name him?" They had discussed names throughout the pregnancy but had never quite settled on one. Now, looking at their son, Delilah said softly, "What about Liam, as a middle name at least, to honor your brother?" Lucas felt emotion tighten his throat. "Are you sure?" "I am sure," Delilah said firmly. "Liam brought me to you in a roundabout way. Without him, none of this would exist. He deserves to be remembered." "Thomas Liam Crawford," Lucas said, testing the name. "After my father and my brother." "It is perfect," Delilah agreed, reaching for the baby. Lucas handed him over and watched as she cradled their son against her chest, marveling at the picture they made. The years that followed were full and rich, marked by the steady rhythms of ranch life and family. Thomas grew into a sturdy toddler with his father's dark hair and his mother's quick smile. 2 years after his birth, Delilah gave birth to a daughter they named Grace, who proved to have her father's stubborn determination and her mother's kind heart. The ranch prospered despite Lucas having depleted his savings to pay Liam's debt. With Delilah managing the books and Lucas making smart decisions about cattle and land, they slowly rebuilt their financial security. Lucas was even able to make some of the improvements he had dreamed about, including a new barn and an expanded pasture. One evening in the spring of 1882, 5 years after their wedding, Lucas and Delilah sat on the porch watching Thomas and Grace play in the yard. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. "You ever regret it?" Delilah asked quietly. "Taking me in, paying that debt, all of it?" Lucas turned to look at his wife, beautiful in the fading light. "Not for a single moment. I cost you so much." "You gave me everything," Lucas corrected. "A family, a purpose beyond just surviving, love, real, deep love that makes every day worthwhile." Delilah leaned against his shoulder with a contented sigh. "I was so lost when I came here. I truly thought my life was over, that the best I could hope for was somewhere safe to exist. You gave me reasons to live again." "We gave each other that," Lucas said, wrapping his arm around her. "You saved me as much as I saved you." Thomas came running up to the porch then, his face flushed with excitement. "Papa, I caught a frog. Come see." Lucas stood with a laugh. "A frog? This I have to see." As he followed his son into the yard, Grace toddling after them, Lucas glanced back at Delilah. She waved, her smile warm and full of promise for all the years still ahead of them. That summer, they received an unexpected visitor. A man rode up to the ranch one afternoon, dismounting with the stiffness of someone who had traveled far. He was perhaps 50, with graying hair and a weather-beaten face. "Looking for Lucas Crawford," the man said when Lucas came out to greet him. "You found him." The man extended his hand. "Name's Charlie Henderson. I worked with your brother Liam up in Montana before he passed. Heard from someone in Cheyenne that he had a widow who came down this way." Lucas shook the man's hand warily. "What can I do for you, Mr. Henderson? Charlie, please." The man pulled a leather pouch from his saddlebag. "Liam and I were partners in a claim. Nothing much came of it while he was alive, but after he passed, I kept working it. Hit a decent vein about 6 months ago. This is Liam's share. Figured it should go to his widow." Lucas took the pouch and loosened the strings. Inside were gold nuggets and a substantial amount of cash. "How much is here?" "About $4,000, Charlie said. "Would have been more, but I took out expenses and my own share. Seemed only fair. $4,000. More than Liam's debt had cost." Lucas stared at the pouch, feeling a complex mix of emotions. "Why bring this now?" "You could have kept it." Charlie looked offended. "Liam was my partner. He worked that claim as much as I did, even if he did not live to see it pay off. His widow earned this money." Delilah had come out onto the porch, drawn by the conversation. Lucas turned to her. "This man worked with Liam. He has something for you." Charlie repeated his explanation for Delilah's benefit, then handed her a piece of paper. "Got it all written down official-like. Wanted you to know this was legal and proper." Delilah looked at the paper and then at the pouch in Lucas's hands. $4,000. "Yes, madam. Your husband was a good man, talked about you all the time. I am sorry he did not make it back to you." "Thank you," Delilah said softly, "for remembering him and for honoring his share. That means more than the money." Charlie stayed for supper and spent the evening telling them stories about Liam's time in Montana. He painted a picture of a man trying hard to change, to be worthy of the wife he loved and the brother he hoped to reconcile with. "He was planning to surprise you," Charlie told Lucas. "Wanted to show up with money in his pocket and his debts cleared. Said he owed you for a lot of years of being a fool." "He did not owe me anything," Lucas said quietly. "He thought he did," Charlie replied. "Used to say you got the responsibility and he got the fun, but that you were the lucky one in the end because you knew what mattered." After Charlie left the next morning, Lucas and Delilah discussed what to do with the money. They were financially stable now, not wealthy but comfortable. "We could expand the ranch," Lucas suggested. "Buy that piece of land to the south, the one with the stream. Or we could save it," Delilah countered, "for Thomas and Grace for their futures." In the end, they did both. They purchased the land Lucas wanted, which would allow them to graze more cattle and improve their water access. The rest they put aside in a bank account for their children. But first, Delilah insisted on one thing. They would travel to Cheyenne and have a proper headstone made for Liam's grave. "He deserves to be remembered," she said firmly. "Not as the man who made mistakes, but as someone who was loved." They made the journey that fall, leaving the children with Martha and Sam. The grave was in a small cemetery outside Cheyenne, marked only by a simple wooden cross. Delilah had not been able to afford more when she buried him. The new headstone was made of fine granite, with an inscription Delilah and Lucas had written together. "Liam Crawford, beloved brother and husband. 1845–1876. He found love and headed home." Standing by the grave, Delilah took Lucas's hand. "Thank you for this." "He was my brother," Lucas said simply. "He deserves to be honored." "He would be so happy to know how things turned out," Delilah said, "that we found each other, that we are happy. He always wanted you to have what he had, someone to love and who loved you back." Lucas pulled her close, resting his chin on the top of her head. "I think he knew. When he sent you here, when he told you to come to me, some part of him must have known how it would end." They stood there for a long moment, honoring the man who had brought them together, before heading back to the life they had built from sorrow and second chances. The years continued to pass in the way of good years, marked by growth and change, but underlaid with steady love. Thomas grew tall and strong, showing an aptitude for ranching that made Lucas's heart swell with pride. Grace proved to be intelligent and willful, with a love of books that had Delilah ordering primers and readers from back east. In 1884, Delilah gave birth to their third child, another son they named Samuel after the ranch foreman who had become a dear friend. Sam the elder was moved nearly to tears when they asked permission to use his name. "Would be honored," he said gruffly. "That boy better live up to it, though." "He will have a good example to follow," Lucas assured him. Life was not without its challenges. There were hard winters and dry summers, cattle lost to disease and predators, the constant struggle of making a living from the land. But Lucas and Delilah faced it all together, their partnership growing stronger with each passing season. On their 10th wedding anniversary in 1887, Lucas surprised Delilah with a trip to Denver. It was the first time they had been away from the ranch together since their journey to Cheyenne, and Delilah was giddy with excitement. They stayed in a proper hotel, ate dinner in a restaurant, and walked the streets of the city hand in hand. On their last evening, Lucas took her to a jewelry store. "Pick out something," he said. "Anything you want." Delilah protested that he had already given her the trip, but Lucas was insistent. She finally selected a delicate locket on a silver chain. That evening, back in their hotel room, Lucas placed a tiny photograph inside it, one of Thomas, Grace, and Samuel that had been taken the previous year. "Now you can always carry them with you," he said, as he fastened it around her neck. Delilah touched the locket with reverent fingers. "Lucas Crawford, you are a hopeless romantic." "Only for you," he replied, pulling her into his arms. They stood by the window of their hotel room, looking out over the city lights, and Lucas thought about the path that had brought them here. If someone had told him 10 years ago that his life would be this full, this rich, he would never have believed it. "What are you thinking?" Delilah asked, her head resting against his chest. "That I am the luckiest man alive," Lucas said honestly. "You came into my life claiming to be my widow, and instead you became my everything." Delilah laughed. "It was rather an unusual beginning." "The best things usually are," Lucas replied. "I spent so many years alone, convincing myself I was content. Then you showed up in your black dress with your carpetbag, turning my world upside down." "I was so frightened," Delilah remembered. "I had no idea what I would do if you turned me away. And then you did not just take me in, you gave me a home, a family, a future. You paid a debt that was not even yours." "Best money I ever spent," Lucas said firmly. "Though I admit, getting some of it back from Charlie was a nice twist." "Liam would have appreciated the irony," Delilah agreed. "He always did love a good story." They returned to the ranch renewed and refreshed, ready to face whatever came next. And what came next were more years of steady happiness, of children growing and the ranch thriving, of love that deepened with familiarity rather than fading. In 1890, Thomas turned 13 and began taking on more responsibility around the ranch. He had his father's height and his mother's quick mind, and he approached every task with a seriousness that occasionally made Lucas want to tell him to go play. "He reminds me of you at that age," Delilah said one evening, watching Thomas work with one of the young horses. "So determined to prove himself." "I was never that coordinated," Lucas protested, though he was pleased by the comparison. Grace, at 11, had declared her intention to become a teacher. She helped her mother with the younger children's lessons and spent her free time reading everything she could get her hands on. Lucas built her shelves for her bedroom to hold her growing collection of books. Samuel, at 6, was still young enough to be mostly concerned with playing and exploring. He followed Thomas everywhere, trying to copy his older brother's every move. Watching his children grow, Lucas sometimes thought about how close he had come to missing all of this. If Delilah had not shown up that day, if he had turned her away, if he had not had the courage to admit his feelings, he would have remained alone on the ranch, never knowing what he was missing. "Thank you," he told Delilah one night as they prepared for bed. "For what?" she asked, brushing out her hair at the small vanity Lucas had bought her. "For being brave enough to come here, for giving me a chance, for loving me." Delilah turned to face him, her expression tender. "Lucas, you act as though you did not give me just as much. I was broken when I arrived, grieving and lost. You put me back together. You showed me that life could still hold joy and purpose. If anything, I should be thanking you." "Then we are even," Lucas said, crossing to her and tilting her chin up for a kiss. "I suppose we are," Delilah agreed with a smile. The years rolled on, bringing with them the turn of the century and all the changes that came with it. The wild frontier of Lucas's youth was slowly being tamed, with railroads and telegraph lines connecting even remote places like Red Cloud to the wider world. Thomas married in 1898, bringing home a sensible young woman named Ruth who fit into the family as if she had always been there. They built a house on the southern portion of the ranch, the land Lucas and Delilah had purchased with Liam's unexpected legacy. Thomas and Ruth's first child, a boy they named Lucas after his grandfather, was born in 1899, making Lucas and Delilah grandparents for the first time. Grace did indeed become a teacher, taking a position at the school in Red Cloud. She remained unmarried, claiming she was too busy with her students to bother with courting, though Lucas suspected she simply had not found anyone who met her exacting standards. Samuel, surprising everyone, developed a passion for mechanics and engineering. He left the ranch at 18 to study in Denver, though he returned every summer to help with the work. Through it all, Lucas and Delilah remained the steady heart of the family and the ranch. They were in their 50s now, their hair silvering and their movements a bit slower, but the love between them burned as bright as ever. On a summer evening in 1902, 25 years after their wedding, they sat together on the porch watching the sunset. It had become their ritual over the years, this quiet time together at the end of the day. "You ever think about that first day?" Delilah asked. "When I showed up claiming to be your widow?" "Sometimes," Lucas admitted. "It seems like another lifetime ago. We were different people then." "Were we?" Delilah mused. "Or were we always these people just waiting to find each other?" "A bit of both, maybe," Lucas said. "You brought out parts of me I did not know existed, made me want to be better, to be worthy of you." "You were always worthy," Delilah said firmly. "From the moment you offered to help a stranger, no questions asked, you showed me exactly who you were. A good man with a generous heart." Lucas took her hand, marveling as he always did at how perfectly it fit in his. "I wish I could go back and tell that lonely rancher what was coming. That the woman in the black dress was going to change everything." "Would he have believed you?" Delilah asked with a smile. "Probably not," Lucas admitted. "I barely believe it myself sometimes, that I get to have this life with you, with our family. It feels like more than I deserve." "It is exactly what you deserve," Delilah corrected. "And exactly what I deserve, too. We found each other, Lucas. Against all odds and reason, we found each other and built something beautiful." As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, Lucas pulled Delilah close. They sat in comfortable silence, surrounded by the land they had worked and the life they had built, grateful for every moment that had led them to this place. Inside the house, they could hear the sounds of family, Thomas and Ruth visiting with young Lucas, Grace reading aloud from one of her books. The ranch hands were settling into the bunkhouse for the night. The cattle were quiet in their pastures, and the world was at peace. "I love you," Lucas said quietly. "More than I did yesterday, less than I will tomorrow." "I love you too," Delilah replied, resting her head on his shoulder. "My husband, my partner, my home." They sat together until the stars came out. Two people who had found in each other everything they had been missing, who had built from grief and chance and courage a love that would last all their days. The woman who had shown up claiming to be his widow had become instead his wife, his heart, his everything. And the rancher who had never married but wished he had found that the waiting had been worth it, that the right person at the right time could transform a life completely. The future stretched before them, full of promise and possibility, and they faced it hand in hand, just as they had faced everything else since that unexpected day in October when Delilah walked through his door and changed his world forever.